Welcome back to the Voice of the Broken Guys. I am one of the hosts, Chris.
Hello, and I am Deadeye Two Tongues.
We are having successful podcast as a new venture between two people that just recently met each other and clicked well, and this is doing the thing. We've got a lot of positive feedback, dude. People said that you and I mesh really well together and everything flowed and felt natural, which is weird because we winged it. The entire thing was just on a whim.
Yeah, absolutely.
I prefer. I don't want to go into something scripted and like feel robotic while talking. I want it to just go.
Well, today should be a real test and testament to that then.
Yeah.
Because we're really winging it today.
Yeah. So this will be the first time that we don't have an email. You are personally going through, today's a hard day for you. So let's talk about that first as to why, and then we'll get into the thing that you wanted me to read. Okay.
So back in August of last year, a good buddy of mine who I would consider a brother, he actually self-deleted. He took himself out. And one of the biggest conflicts that I have with that, I mean, not only did I lose one of like my most cherished and sacred friends, but the way that he left was to something that I'm a massive advocate for, which is, like attaining health through fungi. He took a very large amount, and that was the lead into, that was how we lost him. So, today's his birthday, naturally, I'm going to, have a lot of inner turmoil and whatnot. The eye that I'm actually wearing right now is his ashes. We traveled out to Portland, and it's my way of showing him the world. Waking up today, realizing that I have a platform, where I can talk about mental health. I felt, you are an absolutely amazing person to sit down and have conversations with. So I figured, why not test the water and trying to shed some light on his life, what led up to that, in hopes that, we can help other people who might be struggling with many of the things that led to him leaving, and, how I'm handling it, and the healthy mechanisms that are allowing me to go through with losing him, especially the way that I did.
Okay.
So, I wrote something actually leaving the hospital, because I was able to sit with him. Somehow, he miraculously lived for it was 12 hours after putting a 9mm, to himself. And I was able to get there just shy, 2 minutes after, he finally had expired, but I definitely felt as if he was still in the room. Definitely felt his energy and sat with him, in that separation of body and soul. But yeah, it's interesting, but I have, something that I wrote. I don't know if I can get through it, so I'm asking Chris to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You may just jump into that now.
Yeah, man. Okay. So this is what I wrote leaving the hospital about my brother, and it sheds some light into his past, and it kind of chains everything in together very well, in my opinion.
Okay.
So
are you going to pause me in any of this, or you just want me to read through it?
I think you can just read right through it.
In this time of remembrance, I find myself sitting through countless memories. There's one that came to the surface while hair was being cut from Hartley's now distorted head. To keep as a keepsake, the hair removed his pink, matted, and stiff with dry blood. When we were kids, Hartley was often in the state of mind, in one way or another, that he was. I'm sorry, I'm blind, dude. I don't have my glasses. I wasn't prepared to be reading from a phone. Hartley was often in the state of mind, in one way or another, that he was the night that he ended his life. Often hallucinating, intoxicated, or high. Many nights we spent sitting at our favorite place to congregate, our friend Cody's on Gun Club Road. Cody's mother, Kate, was a seasoned hippie type that knew the boys would be boys, and offered her house as a controlled and monitored safe space for our ragtag group of traumatized teens to explore altered states of mind in careful, calculated, and monitored safe spaces. We all knew Hartley's trauma like it was our own, a frequent rogue that made its presence known with the theft of many, would be joyous occasions. Hart had more trauma than any person in the fresh double digits age should know. Losing more than most, barely 2 decades of life. Children need the nurturing of a mother. They need the protection of a father. In both instances, these necessities were tragically temporary. His father partnered with addiction and self-mutilation in response to his wife's terminal illness, drinking heavily and going as far as severing fingers as a coping mechanism, behavior that Hartley would later adopt. This left Hartley to care for his mother, trying desperately to keep her in good spirits and health as he learned the hard lessons of morality for a second time since losing his older brother. This culminating of loss, combined with the acquired destructive behavior passively imprinted on him, led him to seemingly always be running from the vicious reality that assembled his state of mind. Hartley saw hallucinogenics as a quick and convenient solution to the painful echoes of his past, often pushing the limits of his 100-pound frame and developing mind. While our small group of friends were dipping our toes into this realm of altered reality, Hartley was with zero concern, leaping from the highest ledge, often in secret, consuming 3 or 4 times what anyone else was comfortable doing. This would often become obvious while everyone was experiencing their own altered perception, bringing everyone into a chaotic and fragile mental state. We all did our best to ground him, keep an extra close eye on him, going as far as hiding his drugs from him. But the times this failed would always end in calamity. One night, Hartley took a copious amount of mushrooms, ushering all party members into a state of panic as we all searched high and low for our delicate and unstable friend. Hart had fled into the night down a sparsely unpopulated, unlit back road. It wouldn't be long until we got word that Hart was found by the sheriffs on a breaking and entering 911 call from our school's school's chair of board, Miss Clary. This would be one of many run-ins with the law, but the first I had seen firsthand. The sheriffs left Hart in Kate's care after what seemed like an eternity of her convincing them not to take him in. All of us watching things play out from the second floor window of the house, feeling the mixture of psilocybin and anxiety. Hypervigilant overstimulation at the forefront of everyone's passing moment while we awaited Hart's fate. We watched as the cuffs were removed, documents were given, and now calm and scared, soberish Hartley was brought inside. Knowing his weakened state, we spared him the judgment and gave him love and affection. As we all began to laugh it off, trying to make light of the situation, we slowly came out of the altered state, leaving us wary enough to sleep. The next day, we read the documents with Kate. It was in a court summons. Miss Clary had also weighed in on the issue, bringing repercussions with the school and Hart's foster placement. Hart's hair was long and bright pink, his favorite color. He looked the part of a delinquent, and that needed to be remedied. Hartley was known for his long manic panic hair, so when I shaved it off, doing my best to give him a decent and acceptable look, we all did our best to stand in solidarity while he cried, giving him much needed support and love. I remember the pink locks falling to the ground, like long pink feathers falling from to my bare feet. Hartley, not ready to part with it, collected it into a bag, readying his mind around readying his mind. I just lost my fucking space.
You're good, brother.
It'd
be harder for me to read.
I bet. Readying his mind around how he could use it to make art or jewelry. I love that. As I looked into Hart's now vacant, gaunt, and lifeless expression, this memory flooded my mind as me and Mary cut locks of his hair off to keep as a memento. I couldn't help but look into his head, specks of chunks of brain holding the circumference of his head's final placement. On the last pillow his head would touch, I held the lock of hair in my hand, trying to see through the distortion of gathering tears. Just like my eye, my brain was flooded with thoughts. Memories both good and bad. His hair looked pink, just like the last time I cut his hair, but this wasn't manic panic. It was blood and brain leaving the clump I held rigid and seemingly pink in hue. So much experience in that moment, I start to panic, knowing it was my brain that holds those memories, that's where we keep such things. I'm looking at his head, a broken eggshell in appearance, and it's hollow. How will he remember our life together? Was I erased? Is this mutual extinction? I calm myself down. I cry until his hand goes cold in mine. I come to terms with this being the last time our bodies will be in the same room. What's going to happen to his body? I get up the nerve to leave the room. Both me and Mary use each other's last remaining reserves to strengthen and comfort one another. Enough to pull the towel over his face, cover him up, and press the nurse button to turn off the lights. Pull the curtain, say goodbye. This was the second time I cut his hair. Was not prepared for that, dude. Fuck.
Yeah. So I wrote that leaving the hospital, and man, I got to speak something on, I experienced this, after I was shot, you get to go through and you get to look at all the Facebook posts and stuff of like almost strangers who are, utilizing and capitalizing, the loss or whatever, to give, like a much needed attention.
Right.
So whenever Hart, that happened, of course I get word rather quickly, but the word is that he's just gone, that he was over. He was in the hospital. He stayed, it was like 12 hours after, and somehow, bearing witness to his condition. I mean, it is insane that his body was still there, but a couple Facebook posts that said that he was gone already made it to where I was 2 minutes late when he flatlined, because I was under the impression he was gone. And when I finally realized he wasn't, man, me and Cody got in the car and we were just bats out of hell, and who, like, just, if when someone passes, man, like if you're one of those people, just know that sometimes that stuff has some serious consequences, because the fact that I got there late, just the 2 minutes late, will haunt me the rest of my life, man. I could still feel him in the room.
Yeah.
I could, he separated finally, it like, biologically it was, the separation had happened, but he was still in that room. But I'd almost give anything to go back, because I was always, as the kid, the one that could get through to Hartley when he was in those altered states. Like I had a knack for it, and I just, I went in there on that day and I tear myself up about it. And then the combination of getting there just a couple minutes late, to arguably our biggest moment as friends, I mean, just rots me.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
I've lost a couple of friends, not to, and I'm not trying to like, I'm not trying to like relate to you or be like, I understand, because I fucking don't understand your pain. I have pain of my own, and it's my perspective, and no one will ever know what you went through or be able to like go, oh, I know what he's feeling. The fuck you don't. Like we all experience trauma differently.
Yeah. But I know you as a person, trauma is never something to measure.
Right.
It's we share it in an attempt to like come to terms and learn to cope, like that's what good people do. You know what I mean? But absolutely, go ahead.
In my life, I've lost a lot of friends, but like the three main best friends that I had growing up are all dead now. One died from a car accident on his son's birthday. He was ejected from the driver's seat out the passenger seat of the car and hit a pole, and it ripped half his body apart. And they resuscitated him a couple of times, but he ended up dying in the hospital. And I had another one that fell asleep at the wheel and hit a semi. We're assuming he fell asleep. We don't know. And then another one that died of a drug overdose. And, all three of these guys had done time. Like we were all fucking knucklehead kids. And I'm the only one that didn't, like, I'm here. And like, there's a survivor's guilt in that, because I got out of that life and I'm the only one of my friends in my social circle who fucking survived. And I've overdosed. You know what I mean? I've been in that position where I should not fucking be here. And I am.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. It is a lot to hear all that shit. Some of that really fucked me up reading it. Like I wasn't prepared to have to relive some of that. And it's wild how all of us can live the life that we live, and it takes a single sentence to throw you back into a version of yourself that no longer exists, and having to relive that. I remember those text messages and phone calls coming through. Like it's rough.
Yeah, man. And naturally, my mom always says you have 3 days to grieve, if you want to and we've had the mentality that, that after those 3 days, you start taking on living for multiple people. I know Hartley was in support, of everything I was doing. And I've gone through those 3 days. I've allotted myself that time to really be broken about it, to come to the reality that, I can't call anymore, that, his social media and stuff eventually inactive is going to disappear. Like there's going to be a lot that pulls, him out in a way. But man, when it comes to something like the anniversary of something or a birthday like today, man, is it just, no matter how much you try, is it like kicking an emotional beehive, and that's why, yeah, we typically grab an email and we go through it. But I was like, man, like there's a lot to process here, like the one of the hardest aspects of it is that, he ate a massive amount of mushrooms that night, and I'm sitting here like, man, I respect them like so much. And in previous episodes I've talked about how like I even refrain from doing those because my PTSD dictates that, I stay in sound mind.
Yeah.
And it's just it's wild because I feel like, a big part of that is, a almost clandestine lesson for me, that required, like this. I mean, life is like that. Life is brutal. Yeah. Life, to someone who's conscious and alert, sees signs in these, things that happen, and that one, to me, that I wrestled a hot minute, with that, like I wanted to almost like quit, selling mushroom products and stuff. I was like angry, like,
right.
At that whole thing. But, and then speaking to, how you're the only survivor of, this group of ragtag friends that you had, like looking back, Hartley was the one that we all expected to be gone much earlier, when we left and went on to college and all of that. Hartley was really, getting into some rough stuff. That took him away, from other social circles, like the good ones that, we had kind of developed as we got older, into like these really dark corridors of life. And, he had everything with like his mother got terminal cancer, and he was the kid that was putting the IVs into his mother, and in that reading, I think you said morality, but it was mortality. He was coming to grips with mortality at a very young age, as he's watching his mother pass. His father is becoming a rampant, drinker, so he's literally watching one go quickly and the other one, who's also dying of a broken heart, but as life went on and everything, it was when he had kids. And he was the absolute mother and father. I mean, he had a purpose and he quit doing all of that and was very avidly proud of not smoking, cigarettes anymore, of, no longer. I mean, he would come in because his lifestyle was he was selling, stuff. And when he would come into the tattoo shop, first sleeve I ever did completely was on him. He would, throughout the process, trying to kind of avoid pain, which is ironic because he was a complete masochist, but he would just be throwing, stacks and racks up into the air, and the whole time, just as he's getting further and further into being intoxicated, had this like, F it, I don't care. It's just money. And that was how he kind of was looking at life too, with a lot of his decisions. But man, when children came along, so this was so unexpected. Hartley had went from a completely like allowing trauma to rule over absolutely every facet of him. All of a sudden, he was like kind of out competing everyone else with his work ethic, with his ability to, speak prolifically in the face of trauma, and kind of set an example, and you never would have expected that to be him. So the fact that this happened still lingers with me. Is like, was it a fluke, or was it like, a doorway just opened, and I toil with that, like day in and day out.
Do you know how much he took?
Oh man. From what I understand, he got enough for an entire party, and none of that party really got much of it.
Wow. So I because I am such a strong advocate for plant medicine, I feel like I need to put a disclaimer in this video.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am vehemently against psychedelics being used as a party drug. Mm-hmm. Just like I am vehemently against people doing suspensions at conventions, because there are spiritual things that can happen when doing these things that can really fuck you up if you're not prepared for it. So this is my belief. This has nothing to do with anyone else in the world. These are just my standpoints on this. Because I am an advocate for plant medicine, it should be used for a healing purposes, not abused, and the medicine needs to be respected. And to be clear, I know that we spoke on it briefly a minute ago. The medicine itself is not what killed him. He ended up taking his life because of whatever he decided he needed to do, and it was from a actual bullet and not from the medicine or from the mushrooms.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I have stated it many times. The way I relate to any sort of mind altering anything is that it opens corridors and opens different section of your brain. And there are mushrooms out there that do so many things, and some of them their function is to, poison like whatever is eating it,
right.
and I mean, they have this wide array of use, and that one in particular should be treated like as if you're going to a religious ceremony. Absolutely. In my opinion. You're asking for revelation, you're asking for almost, a manifestation of alternate reality. Especially like dipping your toe into larger quantities, you are literally inviting and asking for like a change. And I agree, especially knowing like, the temperament that comes along with, neurological disorders and, TBIs, things like that. Like, to me, they're sacred. And that's another thing that makes it so difficult. Hartley did get into a mindset later on where, it was very much so like he was in that vein. He was in that for mental health enhancement. He was in that for micro approaching, doing small amounts and stuff. Like what came over, him in that day. But, I say it all the time on my channel, nature will humble you.
Oh, absolutely.
100%. These mushrooms in particular can open up, whatever it is like you're asking for. But if you're in a low vibrational state, you are 100% asking for trouble, let me rephrase that. If you are in a low vibrational state and looking for them to fix your problems, you know what I mean? Rather than like asking for insight from them, like in my opinion, you're really on a tightrope there.
Yeah. I had somebody explain to me the way that they explained the way the new neural pathways are developed while taking psychedelics, specifically mushrooms and Aya, is that if you picture your brain as a fresh snow, all the pathways that you used to walk to get where we're trying to go are gone. And you have to find new ways to get from point A to point B. And when you do that, it's establishing that new path. And that new neural pathway is how you're going to do things, which is why we're able to skirt trauma and work through things and heal, because we're not using the same neural pathway every single time when we're working through things.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really good way to explain it, because everybody knows what a fresh snow looks like. Like everything is clean and pristine, and like you have a whole fresh landscape in front of you. But do you know what changed his mind from being the dad who wasn't smoking or doing anything to getting to the point where he wanted to go that route? Because that's not like a wake up and fuck it, I'm going to do this today.
So, Hartley and I, he realized that I was like, getting into, so he bought let me start here. He bought all these properties with like the intention and having, there was like one, two, three, there's 4 houses on this property that he was able to get through land contract. And he was working on trying to improve, the property, and he was going to make it into kind of like an artist collective. He wanted to, he was talking to me about utilizing social media to pull different artists in for workshops and all sorts of stuff. And he wanted he was very, very much into, culinary cooking. It was like a passion of his, and he wanted to have like a restaurant there. And he ended up, having another child. And that, I think the relationship that he had with her was a massive stressor on him. He wasn't really able to hang out with me for like a while because of the stress that relationship put onto him. And it was whatever, I think he was, he did end up kind of stepping back and out from that relationship towards the end, but he would tell me often, and I did not know how serious it was. He said that, hey, I think that this relationship is going to be the death of me. And he was always arguing, always fighting, always feeling the pressure of the children at home that he was the provider for. He was working multiple jobs. He didn't really have much time to himself. And he had these big, big dreams for his property that, time dictated, the progress on that. And, like, that's why it was so important whenever he started reaching out to me. Like, I know, whenever he's in a vulnerable state, I can tell, you become bonded with certain people, and for him and I, it was like right around the age of like 13,
yeah.
And we hard bonded, man. A lot of reason to, he really, really pushed to have these dreams like coming true, and him reaching out to me after such a long time and hearing the vulnerability in his voice and whatnot. I knew that I had to kind of like get in with him and help him, because he wasn't just asking for me to come and help him set up mushroom logs and stuff. He was asking for me to like essentially reground him, to help him, to reminisce with him, to think of more positive times, and to push towards this one goal that I think if he had made progress on, he would still be here. I think that he was a powder keg, and especially like, he was very much so putting the masculine mask over all of his pain and trauma. He didn't want to bother people with it. He rarely opened up about it. Hartley was very much so, in a lot of moments of life, someone that you felt you had to snap, be like, "Hey, Hart,"
Yeah, where
he was there.
Yeah,
but he was there. I mean, he was there though. That was like but it was like a permanent, almost like, but when he laughed, man, it would light up the room, like whenever someone that traumatized, truly is experiencing like joy and a real jovial feeling, that those people are electric in the room, and that was definitely him. But going back to why I think that night happened, I think that he was in a relationship that really, really needed to like come to an end, that was made complicated by, he can't work both of these jobs, pay for the property and everything without someone at home to help, and I think the two of them just really weren't meant to be together. And it caused a crap load of stress in Hartley's past of trying to escape, realities using, medicines,
yeah,
was what caught up to him, and I think he probably took like a handful, expecting to have fun at the party, probably spaced him out, or, the classic, which you should never do. Like, incrementalization is key in anything like that. After 15 minutes, 20 minutes, if you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I really don't feel it yet, dude, give it another 20.
Yeah.
From a seasoned, vet with a lot of that in the past, like give it another 20. You could always do more, but if you can't do less once you've done it,
Right.
even throwing up breaks down the esophagic pathways, the acid, it almost like intensifies it,
it absolutely does.
So take it from someone. I'm sure you agree, give it a little bit more time.
I'm a 1 hour minimum before I would ever allow anybody like in my social circles to take a booster. It's an hour. If people are like 45 minutes, I'm like, I mean, that's cool, but give it an hour. When I did the IR ceremonies that Saturday night, when they offered the second dose, I was stone sober. And when she came over and she's like, we're getting ready to offer the second dose. If you would like to take a dose, I was like, I'm going to give it 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes. Yeah. Like, just let me chill for a minute. And she walked away and like, I was like, okay, I'm starting. And then I just went right down the fucking rabbit hole. And had I got up and taken that second dose, like it would have been a very, very interesting night for me. But like, I'm really glad that I was able to pace myself. And like you said, you can't take it back once it's in your system. You touched on a couple things that I don't want to go by. One of them is being, ladies, I know that there are a lot of ladies who watch this podcast. And if you watch this with your man, I want you to look at his face when I say this. When a man tells you he doesn't want to do this anymore and doesn't give any clarification besides that, that's a suicidal statement. If they say, I'm tired, and they can't tell you why they're tired, it's that they don't want to continue suffering and pushing on the way that they do. And the other one was when a man tells you something along the lines of, I think this is going to be the death of me. That's not an empty statement. You also said, sorry, I'm trying not to get emotional.
No, man, I'm right there with you.
you said, fuck, dude. That he was the stoic man who tried to like put that veil up and was not able to come to people because he didn't feel like a burden. That is every husband in every relationship who is leading their home. It is our job
to be masculine.
It's our job to protect our family, and all of the shit that would land on my wife and my kids. It is my responsibility to stop that from happening. And there are going to be days that they get splashed by my ugly, and I know that. But the goal is to make it so that they're being splashed a little bit by my ugly instead of the avalanche of the world around us.
Absolutely.
And so many people get caught up in the not being able to talk to their partner because they don't want to put that on their feet. And I don't have that with my wife. When I'm having bad days, I pull her aside. I'm like, I'm struggling with my mental health right now, whatever. This is what's going on in our life. And I'm able to talk to her. But until I had her, I was never able to have those conversations. I had to suck it the fuck up and suppress my shit because I have things that people are relying on me to do. And, I use the phrase on the podcast a lot. There's a difference between being that guy and being that motherfucker. And sometimes you have to be that motherfucker, but sometimes you can't. And you need to be able to lean on your person. And if you don't have somebody to lean on, this is where every one of us is going to end up. We did an episode earlier where we were talking about old people. And if you look at every old couple that's like 75 and up that are together, the woman can still stand up straight. The man is hunched over. He can barely walk. His back and hips are fucked up. His knees are fucked up. He grunts when he sits down. And that's because he did everything he could breaking his body to make sure that she had everything she could get. And sometimes we forget that they're there to help us and support us and hold us. My wife is there to pick my shield up when I can't carry that motherfucker anymore. I'll continue to fight as long as she's holding it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's important that these conversations don't get overlooked and overstepped or misunderstood, ladies. When we say things to you, we know what the fuck we're saying. We just can't have the conversation because we don't know how you're going to take it. We don't want to be Baker acted. We don't want to be looked down upon because we're weak. We don't want to look vulnerable because what if we cry and they no longer see us as the protector or whatever the ugliness is that is the stigma around all of these conversations. But these conversations have to happen, especially if you love your man, guys. Give them space to just give them space. Give them make space for them in your life. And if they have to sit there for 15 minutes in complete silence or cry or whatever the fuck it is that they need to do, just be there. Rub their back, fucking put your feet on their lap, lay your head on them. Let them know that there's a reason for what they're doing. That reason is enough for us most of the time.
What do you have to say in that situation? If the man's pattern of behavior, is destructive.
You mean instead of going to their person and like acting out, punching holes in walls and acting like self-destructive?
No.
How do you mean that?
No. More so like this. What if, the partner is approached by the man and he has that conversation and then he goes, I just need to go down to the bar and take like 20 shots.
That's not the answer.
Yeah.
That's masking. That's escapism. So dude, I have such a hard fucking time. You just
know that's going to be a thing. And it took me a while to not be like that, so speaking to the men and stuff out there, when saying this to your partner and saying, and all of the things, being there for them and everything, like, man, the delicacy of a man in a mental state who's going to go off and use like a more of a destructive method.
Yeah.
Like that I feel like that's I know for me, it was a tightrope because like I'm clawing and being like, no, this is like what I need. This is what I need. What would be a healthy way to help someone, get the point across that that's not good.
So first you got to recognize that if your person is trying to go to that extreme to suppress and numb, this has been going on for a while. And they know that whatever the other situations may be, they're not going to get any type of reprieve, and they're not looking for a solution to the problem. They're looking to not hurt, whatever that hurt looks like. So before I move any further, I have a deep-seated hatred for alcohol. I have a phenomenal whiskey collection, and I allow myself 3 drinks a week when I have them, but I haven't had a drink in probably 4 months. I probably have a $40,000 whiskey collection. I collect bottles, but I rarely crack them and very rarely drink. And I can't remember the last time I even caught a buzz, let alone got drunk. Alcohol is a depressant.
Now, did you gain this opinion because you used to abuse alcohol?
Oh, I was a full-blown addict. Yeah. Like I said on the last episode, I was eating Vicodin and Loratabs repeatedly every single night and drinking on top of it. Like that was my high of choice in my early 20s.
Do you think subconsciously having all of the very nice whiskey collection and everything behind you and being able to pass it every day, like it doesn't call to you as like internal, like almost victory march that you do?
I don't think so. I don't like the idea of being a slave to something. That's why I never smoke cigarettes. And anytime I've ever gotten close to feeling like an addiction past the alcoholism and like that death experience that I had, I'm not going to let something control my life.
Yeah.
So, and that's the alcohol for me. Like I enjoy bourbon. I like the flavor of it. I like tasting it and I like finding bottles. It's a hobby for me. It's not a escape. But I also, I was drinking every day before. I'd wake up, go to work, come home from work and drink all night. Like that was just my routine. But I'm also from a family of alcoholics and addicts. My dad was a drug addict. My mom is an addict still, alcohol. And I think my stepdad's probably still drinking too, but I grew up in that environment and I got to witness all of the destructive behavior of it. I did Al-Anon when I was a kid. I've done AA. But my understanding of alcohol is that it's a depressant. And if you are already depressed, it's going to make things worse. And if you go to the bar and you drink and you take any type of NSAIDs the next day to feel better, that's going to increase your depression by 40%. So like you already feel like shit. You're going to feel even worse tomorrow if you go do that. And if you to answer your question with the destructive behavior, if you have a partner who's able to go, hey, I can tell you're hurting and I know that you want to go to the bar, but let's go to the beach instead. I found this new trail on all trails. Let's go hike. Let's go fucking get into nature and get you away from everything. We'll leave the phones in the car. And if you want to cry in the woods, I'll fucking cry with you. If you want to scream and punch and kick things in the woods, we can do that too. Like, but I would rather you do that and work through your things than go to the bar and act up, because what happens if you don't make it home tonight because you drank too much, right? Like those conversations need to be had, and it needs to be from a place of I love you, not are you fucking doing this again? And that's the difference, because most people are getting angry that their person is using alcohol as an escapism and they're leaving. And the conversation is still not actually being had about what's going on at the surface, and things snowball.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, the lack of communication for sure. Like it is definitely, not understand, the person clearly is trying like to escape, I guess I have like a little bit of a vendetta against, and not just because it was me, not really my partner's fault and stuff. But I remember like whenever I was really, really sinking and I was drinking vodka to sleep, 100 proof, and I had people who like Johnny on the spot would go and grab me another bottle, like, and then it got to the point to where I could walk down. I mean, during the COVID times too, it's like the only things that are open is liquor store, fast food, and everything. It was just a really easy time to sink that low. But, I was able to, eventually be able to drink an entire handle of 100 proof vodka and then walk myself. If we were in a group of people, and we got pulled over and harassed by the police or something, I would probably still be nominated to do all the talking.
Wow.
Because like I had sunk, that deep into, like wanting to be able to sleep is a whew,
it's a torture mechanism. They use that as more effective interrogation.
Yeah. I mean, that's why like that and the whole, remember like the blaring Britney Spears to like, Afghani like strongholds and stuff. Like not only is it like the pop music, psychologically warping, but keeping people awake is really,
it's effective. They did it in Waco.
Yeah. But I wanted to, I guess, get ahead of that, because there's going to be like a lot of people who are like, yeah, listen to these guys, man. Like, let me do my thing whenever I'm broken and stuff. But it can't really condone if your thing is, I'm going to go get blitzed, at a bar down the road and avoid the problems. I think it's healthy to kind of throw that out there as two men in our position.
Dude, we wouldn't be here where we wouldn't be here having a platform or even this discussion if we didn't have a shitty fucking life and overcome the things. And that's what it comes down to. People that look at us, that live the life that we live or are suffering, don't want to hear shit from somebody in a fucking suit, man. They don't want to hear the technical terms or the fucking DSM definitions of shit. And they want to have conversations with people who fucking been there and know that they can come out from the other side of it. What was it that made you quit drinking?
Well, I kind of had like a epiphany, that I was withering. I mean, I was withering away in that basement, and I was kind of close to, having those thoughts again, like not, like I said, not like me. And it was funny. I called out through Facebook and pretty much was like, I left a pretty cryptic message that was like, I really need some help, and I left people to their imagination. And I had an old friend who ironically ended up really backstabbing me. But he came through. He's my really, really close friend from kindergarten and all the way up. And much like I knew Hartley the way I did, he knew me that way. And he showed up at my door. And
after the backstabbing?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, not after.
Damn.
It was before. Yeah. But I think it's kind of funny because, he saved my life in that moment, because he came and he kind of reminded me, like I was saying, there's people who are willing to watch you dissolve and self-destruct, and that, leads into that other part, allowing your partner to have destructive mechanisms and stuff. I had people who, oh, he's out of alcohol. Let's get him some more, let's do that. Like, Ben showed up. Well, I said his name. Guy showed up and he knew me and he knew that I was kind of falling apart. And he was actually the one too that was like, your story and everything that accommodates, all of your pain would probably be really good on social media. You should travel and you should, tell your story, and you should, and at the time too, I was diving hard into plants and looking for things to get rid of my nerve damage. And he was like, you should really take this and do something big with it. And I did. And I was like, man, like he was right. What a lifesaver. And I had to wean myself off. And that also, kind of coexisted with the being able to step in front of the man who shot me, right around that time, like, cause there was a large part of it that was, I had no idea who tried to end my life. So I didn't leave this basement, I tried not to as much as humanly possible. I didn't feel safe. Once we had him and he was put into custody, that's whenever I start, everything started kind of becoming unfuzzy, and I had more of a drive to get my life back. But it was really the moment that I put out this cryptic message on Facebook and had a very old friend show up. And man, it's funny how it happens. Just say the perfect words and kind of open my eye. And I started pretty much almost like trying to kind of go cold turkey, which was terrible.
Yeah.
But got myself like weaning off, and me and my ex bought a camper. Pretty much did exactly what he said. You should get a camper. You should do. And I kind of followed that blueprint, got myself into a much better state. And then with, a brand new mentality and getting off the hooch, started reshaping my life around telling my story on social media. But, it was yet again, very close to the end feeling, epiphany, yeah, God's little blueprint for my life, pathway illuminating. That's how I always like see it, almost like a true and real, there's like almost like a yellow brick road that just formed. Why do I feel like whenever I went to Florida for you, you're like, we could do a Zoom, and I'm like, something tells me that I need to be in Florida.
Right.
It was an illumination of a pathway.
I get that.
And I followed it.
I believe the universe puts people in positions to do things. I also think that that's where a lot of our suffrage comes from. I don't think that I would have survived what you survived. Right. So like your story being very different than mine, there's insights that you're going to have that I'm not going to, and the two of us having conversations is going to benefit somebody out there one way or another. Yeah. And we were able to survive the things that we went through where other people may not have. All the loss, all the ugly, the divorces, the fucking child abuse, all the things that people suffer through. Like we do suffer through it. There's a reason that we make it. There's a lot of fucking people that don't.
For sure.
So
I mean, and that is just as much their path.
Yeah.
As unfortunate as it is, but each one of us like has a path, and some people are really good at talking about it or realizing that path, could benefit other people, and then there's some people who they don't have that ability to project that, but they are leading a life that makes people look in and go, ooh, I don't want to be like that, or, oh, I want to be more like that, Yeah.
Yeah, certainly life lessons. You talked earlier about, I'm kind of backtracking now, but you talked about how he bought those four houses on a property and wanted to create a collective. I think it's wild that as a society, we live in bigger homes with smaller families, right? The goal is the big house. And as we get the big house, we don't bring the family with us. The family's got their own dreams of big houses. And that's not how it used to be. You look at, you're from the Appalachians, so but it used to be that a family would buy a home in a holler and eventually they'd own the whole holler. Like you would pull down that road and every house on that fucking road is a member of that family. And that was the community. It would be like not a commune, but everybody had each other's back. And that's just the way that it was. And I know that it's still like that in some areas in the United States, but
it's very common here. Yeah. Very, very common.
But we crave that community. And as people move into the cities, they find themselves wanting to move back away and have that source of community. Peaches and I have talked a lot about buying land and putting tiny homes on it for our friends and the people that we love.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's human nature, when you have, the more ideal growing up, like, of course you're probably not going to want to have a house pop next to your mom,
Not good.
Like it's probably not the look. Right. Yeah. But, my family could do that, we're close enough to where, my mom still kind of, wants that to be, she loves when we're all close. Like none of the children really moved far away, except for Shannon, who went to Tennessee. But if she had it her way, man, she would buy 100 acres and then each one of the kids would go in and timber it out, and build their little nook. And I think inherently when things you have all that trust and love and your upbringing, I'm about to have children, mom's down the road. She's in her, older stage of life where she's got time, probably has a little bit of leaving the nest syndrome.
Yep.
She's going to love to have kids around. That's going to allow me to have someone I trust with my child. And I'm also going to be able to go and hit the occupational pathway, with the aid and assistance of, that's natural. A lot of people in Appalachia do that. That is very much so the ideal life,
It's not like
but
that everywhere anymore, though.
yeah, yeah. I find that, to be strange, but then again, I've never been someone chasing like a hardcore degree in something or looking for, I've always been kind of self-made, so I'm still, my mom helps me with laundry sometimes, bro. Like, I ain't gonna lie, like she's awesome. She looks, over my kiddo if I have, like a trip I need to take, like she's very much so my homie.
What would have chasing a degree done for you though? Like I'm a 7th grade education, bro. I don't have a good enough diploma. I don't have any degrees. I did manage to land 2 personal training certifications because I lied and said I had a high school diploma when I took the tests.
Hell yeah.
But I have 2 personal training certifications. But beyond that, I don't have. We're not therapists. Like I do want to become a psychedelic integration coach, which we just found a website. It's $12,000 for a 10-month course, and I think that we're both going to take it so that we have that. But that's only because I have a friend that's going to be opening a church soon, and they're going to get their sacred sacrament license. And if that happens, I want to be a part of it.
So does that like essentially make you, in layman's terms, like a professional trip sitter?
Well, it would be, so for integration, it would be the after. It's helping people come to grips with the things that the medicine shows them and applying it to their life and making sure that what they get during ceremony continues. Because if you go to ceremony for a weekend and go back to work on Monday, everything that you learned over the weekend, like you're still getting downloads from the medicine and you're still trying to cope with everything the medicine showed you. And then going back to the work and dealing with all the energy and the people, it's a fucking lot. It's hard for people to integrate back. For example, the last ceremony that we did, we got onto a video game, I don't know, probably 4 days after we got back from ceremony. And one of the people on the game was very animated, screaming and yelling and having fun. And it was so much that Peaches she got off video game. She hasn't played video games since.
Yeah.
Because just the energy of it was too much for her because she was still very sensitive to all of that. But,
Well, I mean, whenever you were just explaining this and you used the word, you're getting downloads.
Yep.
So I've seen people who have, these experiences and whatnot, and they come out with, this interesting perspective, that we are, and like there's a lot of binary type feeling, like sometimes, for something as natural, I've seen a lot of people, talk of almost like we're in a simulation.
Yeah. There's a whole theory about that. Elon Musk has even talked about that. So
yeah. So when you say download, there's a lot of words you could have said there. You could have said still getting revelations, like you're still getting, like visions, but you used download. Can you tell me
download
why you think?
Because that's the term that is used in the ayahuasca circles, because the medicine, so start this way. The first time you take the medicine, it takes a lot longer to hit you than the second time and the third time. There are people that can take ayahuasca now that's done it a lot that can feel the effects in 10 or 15 minutes. I was 2 hours before I felt the 2 hours in a booster the first time I took it. I didn't get shit. Second night, it took me a little over an hour. So I'm assuming that when I go back on 2 weeks from now that we do our new ceremony, I'll probably feel the medicine within the first half hour of me taking it. Because
do you think that's like a willingness of the brain, or you think it's just like a metabolite?
I think it's both. So ayahuasca is 2 plants. It's a capi vine and then the chacruna. And one of them is a DMT. The leaves of the chacruna plant is DMT. And then the ayahuasca vine, the capi vine, is an MAOI inhibitor. So if you smoke DMT, you get a 10 to 15 minute high. If you drink ayahuasca, you get the same DMT high, but it lasts for 3 to 6 hours. So because
that's a long, man, if you know DMT, who, man, 6 hours, dude. The time I accidentally did that try not to, is that a phrase we can use? Are we allowed to say that on YouTube?
What, try it? Accidentally tried it? If this video gets demonetized, it gets demonetized. I want people to get value from this more than I want to make money from it. Right. So it is what it is. Well, and if we have to move it back to the other channel, I will.
Well, the dimethyltryptamine, that whenever I accidentally, did that, the amount of time I felt I spent, which I mean, dude, imagine doing that shit on accident, Chris.
Yeah.
I can't even describe that, bro. Whenever you're completely unaware that it's about to happen to you, oh my God,
Yeah.
That a whole different experience. But it felt as if, and it's the same thing whenever, I was in and out of dying. Those moments, which you're experiencing DMT,
Right.
You experience it when you dream. It's, dreams are vivid whenever your brain is, allowing that to push in, and and it's in all of us, it's in every living thing, but whenever I was passing, your brain is flooding with that. It is allowing like quite a bit of that, in, and it really gave me some complicated questions, like, that I still wrestle with today. Like, it stretched one moment out into an eternity, for the most part. And sometimes I still stop and think, like, I could still very well be there.
Right. Dude, I get that. I fucking get that. I've experienced that. You don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that door, once that's like the complicated doorways I'm talking about, when I'm like, I don't know if I need to do anything like right now, because I'm still like staring at this doorway that opened in my brain in a very violent and crazy way, and being like, okay, I see the doors open, but I struggle to even peek my head around, like, and peer in, sometimes, because it's so heavy. It's so huge, man.
Well, have you heard of people refer to the ayahuasca as mother or grandma Aya?
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah. Well, through our conversation.
So that's part of the download process to get back to the conversation. When you take the medicine, some people will actually have conversations with her, and you will feel her and hear her still after the medicine goes away, and you'll continue to get those downloads, and those downloads can come in the form of dreams. You could be driving and have an epiphany, and you'll hear that, like, this is what I was trying to show you. And I think it's your brain connecting the dots more than speaking to a spiritual entity, but I don't fucking know. I know that I didn't get the same experience Peaches did. I got to experience a whole lot of other things, including somebody else's life for a little while, multiple times throughout the night. But she actually had the medicine talk to her, and she's had a few instances since then where she's done hape, and like when she's done hape, she was able to reconnect to the medicine immediately. But my wife has a very different spiritual path about her than I do.
Yeah.
She's also 100 pounds less than I am. So like that matters, your body mass matters when you're taking any type of substance. So, but the downloads that continue to happen is you being in tune to the universe and the energies. And I, we are all connected, and you can look at the way that mycelium makes trees talk to each other. You are getting data from this oak tree over here to this oak tree because there's an infestation that's making the roots rot. So this needs to send alerts, and it's going to send nitrogen and a whole bunch of shit through the mycelium to the other tree. And that tree is going to start setting up defenses to make sure that root rot doesn't affect this tree.
Yeah. Neat, isn't it?
That is us.
Yeah.
We all have that. But we don't have the way to access it the way that the mycelium interacts with the trees. But when you take plant medicine, it does open that up for us. You are creating new neural pathways, and you become more susceptible to other people's energies. There has been people who experience telepathy. Peaches and I have shared consciousness multiple times while on plant medicine. But the downloads that come afterwards, we refer to it as that because if you tell somebody that you're still talking to the medicine after the experience, they think you're possessed. Like, that's my thought process as to why they use the term download. That, and it's easy to understand.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That is a very, that is a neat way to put that, for sure.
Did you watch my video?
Oh shit!
All that shit about me needing to send it, and you didn't watch the shit.
All right, I've been looking for the right time to do it. So a part of me is kind of like it. So can you paint this picture for me? Is it mostly audio?
It's just her and I sitting here. You can listen to it. You don't have to watch it. It's not like we did a retreat where we were walking around the vlogging camera. We sat here and talked about it afterwards.
Yeah.
So are you asking that, or are you asking me about my experience?
Well, I was more so asking, because I'm super susceptible, like I'm sitting here explaining to you, these doorways and stuff, a part of me is like I feel like I need to be in a very cucumber on eyes, like sit back just in case there is like some trigger point that like makes me, be like, whoa, that is so deep and so, heavy. I feel like I need to, I've been tattooing a lot the past 4 or 5 days, and then I had my kid over the weekend, and so it's just been
How has that affected you though?
What's that?
All of that.
Well, I mean, I am somebody who definitely does better when I'm not idle. I am such a pacer, like it helps me to feel almost as if I have, the weight of the world on me. I always say that I thrive off of tension.
Yeah.
So it's been good, and then like Cody and I are doing all of the preparation and whatnot to like, I saw you talking about, was kidney support, right? That you said, we went and so let me give some, I guess, backstory to anyone that doesn't follow me on TikTok. We run a supplement company, and it's hellfireholler.com. You can check it out. But we wanted to kind of give back to the community, because we're in like a position at this point, where we are able to expand. And we went through and we requested that our following, say, hey, can you give us kind of an idea of, the most common ailment, whether it just be among the community that I've built there on TikTok, but I knew it would give insight to, across the board, so we saw that, headaches, like detoxing, liver, kidney support, that we took the ones that were the most reoccurring. And, now we're in the process of like formulating, like a liver detox, headache, kidney support, we're in the process of getting all of that running, which, is a pseudo stressful thing to do. You're making products like, you're diving pretty deep into like research. Like you can just slap a bunch of stuff into a bottle that's like great for headaches, I'll put some like, ginger in here, I'll put some feverfew in here. But if you don't know, how these things react together in the body, you could put an upper and a downer in there. You could be making something that is incredibly counterintuitive.
Right.
So that season is upon us of, we want to expand into, a new array of products, to help people and to benefit the community. But man, does it come along with a tremendous amount of study.
Right. So there's a difference between doing that and tattooing. So for those of you who have never done a tattoo, it's not physically demanding, but it's mentally exhausting. And it's not just mentally exhausting because you're talking to somebody. That's a huge part of it. But if you're sitting with the same person for 6 to 8 hours and you are hyper fixating on what you're doing and you're looking at it here and you're not stepping back and looking at the bigger picture unless you're taking breaks, but you're doing that while still dealing with other people in the studio, other energies that are walking around, and your client, it's fucking exhausting.
And you're causing them pain.
Right.
You're causing them pain, which, you can be a stoic, seasoned tattoo artist that's been in the business for forever. And you can say, yeah, it's part of the process and everything, but you're still trying to avoid maximizing it.
Right.
And then also there is the whole act of you are in fact putting someone through pain. So guess who is going to be like more than likely a therapist today?
And you are. So that's why I asked.
Especially if it's like, this is for my dog that just passed.
Right.
This is for my grandmother. I want you to do my mother's signature. She just passed of X. Like, I mean, it is a very heavy emotional occupation. There's plenty of people who come in and get stuff just for shits and giggles, but there is a tremendous amount of people who come in with like, a purpose, and they put that on top of you and they're like, hey, I need this. I need it to look absolutely spectacular. Nerve-wracking. It reminds me of the I think it's the Greek story. It starts with a D. The guy's name starts with a D, where he essentially is talking to the king. And he's like, I really I envy you. Your life must be so easy and effortless, and whatnot. And the king is like, okay, well, trade me. And the guy gets to experience almost being king for a day, but he fastens a gladius, like a sword, by one fine string from the ceiling to be right over top of that throne he's sitting on. And he's like, that will give you the best idea, and when you're sitting there putting permanent images on somebody, you're worried about that moment of doing it perfect. You're worried about them healing. It is a tremendous burden.
Okay, so being that you have PTSD, you have a TBI, you're going through all the things that you've gone through in life, and you've got back into the tattoo shop and you've been tattooing heavily. Now that we've had that conversation, let me ask you again, how is that working for you? Like, how are you doing?
I don't regret it.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Because now you're dealing with other people's energies. You're dealing with that connection that we have because we all are connected, and you're bringing that shit home with you. And then you got to go and spend time with your kid. And then you factor in all of the research and shit that you have to do. There's emotional strain that's happening and an energy strain that's happening while you're trying to move forward on other things. It's important to recognize these things. Peaches and I have created cleansing rituals when we're done with our podcast because it's a lot. And some of it is breathing techniques. Some of it's meditation. We turn our phones off quite a bit now compared to before, and we just disconnect and like go live our lives and do shit. So it's important that you protect that mind state and your energy.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt that I did that whenever I lent my, presence in the studio to a studio that was not walk-in, I'm not taking on apprentices, like we really don't, cater to we're going to do like 9, 10, when I owned my own studio, it was so close to campus that so many days would go by of sororities, fraternities, all coming in, and they want the same artists to do it. They have all these like, niche, like, well, we could have the whole shop do it. Nah, we want it all done by like the same guy, or we want it all done by you. We all want your work.
Right.
That,
and then
that
they
stuff.
show you a Pinterest image. It's not your fucking work. Hey, I really love what you do. Can you do this name? I do portraits. I can fucking write your name.
Yeah. And then the ambiguity of not knowing what's coming in like day to day.
Right.
You have your appointment or whatever, but you're going to saddle in if your appointment's done and there's a walk-in that comes in, that like on the spot, hey, can you do something like this? Well, let me go to the drawing board. I avoided all that by doing the private studio, and I dictate my own schedule and kind of make my own, my own time. And I don't have to worry about a lot of that. Physically, I'm good. I've never been in a position within the past 10 years of tattooing where I was actually comfortable being able to sit. I've been stretching and working out and doing, that to the point where I have at least that done, because holy crap, is it physically demanding. You'd think sitting in a chair, all day long.
All of them look like shrimps and they can't walk.
Yeah. And the cigarette breaks are never accompanied by, stretching breaks.
No.
No one stands up to take a stretching break. That's the last thing that people tend to do. Yeah. It's a complete, like almost mindless process when you've been doing it that long. But no, when I say I regret like going back to tattooing, it's not that I don't miss the art. It more so just shines. Like I'm like, man, I'm so close to being able to choose whether or not I want to tattoo, because I have the income like on point, and everything laced up, to where tattooing is something like I can choose to do. I still need it to supplement income.
Yeah.
And I wish that, it was something that I was like, oh yeah, man, I got this friend like you said you wanted more face tats. I wish it was like I had a month to prepare myself for that one tattoo. That one tattoo is going to mean a lot. I need it to look freaking perfect. You know what I mean? Like that's what I want. I want it to be like a real, super, super artsy, like approach again, with all the time in the world to do an actual piece of art.
The last probably 4 years of me tattooing, I only did what I wanted when I wanted.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got 4 hours available today. It's going to be $1,000. Who wants it? Somebody be like, I want it. And I'm like, all right, come on, let's go. And they'd come in and be like, what are we doing? I was like, I don't know yet. And I fucking just put whatever I want on them. And it was great. But I don't need to tattoo anymore. And I got to be honest, I think the tattoo industry burned me out so much of art that I don't do anything other than photography. I don't paint anymore. I don't sketch. Like I don't fuck around with any of that shit. I let it all go. And I've focused on other things, and I'm happier for it.
No yearning. No.
None. Dude, if I get a hair up my ass to want a tattoo, I could make a phone call right now and book out my whole day. I know for a fact that there are people that would, hey guys, I'm out of retirement for the next 2 weeks. I'd book every single day. And I know that. I could always tattoo my wife if I really, really wanted to. I mean, I'd have to look at it for the rest of my life, but I could. So
now here's a question. Do you think that skill or let's just say art in general. I mean, because obviously tattooing, will like your skill, you might need a refresher, sitting down and working on a human body and all that.
I don't
But do
think
you
I
think,
would.
you don't think so?
I think I'd be able to pick it right back up. I've been in the industry since 97, dude.
Yeah.
And like I've taken breaks where I've went and got regular jobs and sat back down and it's slower when I get back into it. But I think the tattoos actually look better because I cared more and I was fresh. You do the same shit every day doing like a street shop. You stop carrying so much. If you're a military base or a college town, the tattoos don't have to look good. They just have to be consistent.
Yeah, we were college town, but we put out hella good work. But I totally get what you're saying there. And we call them slam shops.
Yeah.
I mean, there are studios that some of my buddies and stuff have worked at where they literally walk up to the door where there's like a almost like an envelope, or a mail kind of hatch that slides into, like a receptacle. And it's like, you don't leave that room, dude. Like you're tattooing and you halfway through your tattoo, you hear like ka-chunk and you look back and hanging on your door is your next tattoo. And it's just a stencil made up at the size with the description of how it's done. So by the time you're like, okay, thanks, they'll take care of you in the front. You're wiping down, you turn around, the next guy's standing there. Like,
I would hate that.
Oh, dude, tell me about it.
I would hate that.
Tell me about it, man.
Just not even for doing, the simple stencil flash. Like I remember tattooing Cherry Creek all day long. I don't give a fuck about any of that. It's the in and out of the people that would drive me nuts.
Dude,
I need to decompress.
It.
Yeah. I do. And the little dragons and
that design, I've seen it on like 5,000 people. I've probably tattooed it on like at least 100 people. What was with that? Like, let's see how nitty gritty and fine line and untattooey we can make tattoos look, especially for the time.
Yeah.
Like,
all of those tattoos look like shit now. Every one of them.
Yeah. Good old Cherry Creek.
Yep. All right, dude, let's wrap up. I need to, speaking of stretching, I've been sitting here since 9:00 this morning. I need to move my body. So
no, I feel it. So man, I appreciate the deep conversation on that. That definitely could put me in a good headspace talking about something so traumatic. And I'm lighthearted. I feel really good, much better. And I gotta say, anybody, I know that we kind of like drifted off for a second into, from the initial subject matter, but I'm going to like use this opportunity to highlight, like, that's a really good thing, that shows that if you're repressing a lot of, these things, if today is a hard day for you and you find yourself, vacant of someone you can lend an ear to or have an ear lent to you or something, try. It might be you, look out. There's plenty of people who are going to have your back on days that are hard, people who will, lend you attention and help you get through it. And I mean, I felt heavy walking into this episode. I almost told you, like, I don't think I'm going to be able to avoid talking about this, and you were like, let's switch it up. Let's do something different. Talking about the problems, guys, I highly recommend it. That's what this show is all about. I feel 10 times better because I did talk to you today, Chris. So let that be a testament to the effectiveness of, speaking outward, about your trauma, and feel like $1 million.
Good shit. So, glad that it helped.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys. Well, with that being said, thanks for tuning in and we will see you next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thank you guys for coming. This is your reminder to quit bitching and start fixing. Love y'all. Stay wild.